The wind howled down the mountains like a thing alive, dragging cold across the valley floor and rattling the loose shutters of the cabin. Inside, the fire cracked low, casting thin orange light over thick logs and bare stone. He sat beside it, hunched forward, the blade of his knife catching the glow with each slow stroke across the block of cedar in his hands. A half-finished bear, head bowed, rested beside the kindling. He didn't carve for beauty, only to keep his hands from remembering other shapes. A rifle stock, a saber handle, a woman's jawbone after a shell dropped too close. The lumberjack hadn't spoken aloud in 5 days. He liked it that way. Silence meant peace, and peace, out here, was a kind of prayer you earned with hard labor. His world extended as far as the timberline, bounded by river ice and high spruce, and beyond that. He didn't care to look. Then came the knock. Sharp, hollow, 2 beats, like an afterthought from the dark. He didn't move. Sometimes, foxes or bears knocked over the shovel, leaning against the porch rail. But the knock came again, heavier now, urgent. He rose slow, joints stiff with the cold and the years, and lifted the shotgun from the mantel. When he opened the door, wind slammed his face. Snow flurried sideways in the lamplight. A man stood there, young, rail-thin, with a nervous mouth and eyes that couldn't hold still. Behind him, slouched on a mule, was a girl. "She's yours now," the man said, not looking him in the eye. The lumberjack didn't answer, just narrowed his gaze. The man stepped aside. The girl didn't move. "Can't take her back," the man said, shifting from boot to boot. "Ain't safe for her where we're headed. She's near birthing, and I got no time for that kind of trouble." He tossed a rifle across the threshold. An old Henry repeater, still oiled, worth something. "And this," he added, drawing 2 jars of cloudy liquor from his coat. "Fair trade." The lumberjack didn't look at the jars. He looked at the girl. She was young, though the dirt and tiredness made her look older. Her coat hung loose, but not enough to hide the roundness beneath it. Her lips were cracked, eyes hollow, knuckles white around the saddle pommel. She didn't speak, didn't cry, just stared past him into the cabin's warmth, as if she were already halfway inside. "No," the lumberjack said. It came out like gravel. He turned back toward the fire. "Suit yourself," the man called, already pulling the mule's bridle free. The girl tumbled sideways into the snow with a choked cry. He didn't stop, just mounted his horse and vanished into the trees. She didn't try to get up. The lumberjack stood in the doorway, breath misting. He knew what it was to be left in the snow. He also knew what happened to women alone on this trail. With a curse low under his breath, he stepped out, slung her over his shoulder, and carried her in. She didn't weigh much more than a sack of split wood. Inside, he laid her down by the fire. Her skin burned hot under the cold. Fever. He didn't speak as he tended her, just gave her water, wrapped her in his spare blanket, and set a pot of snow to melt over the flames. The storm thickened. Wind sobbed at the doorframe. She slept fitfully, murmuring things he couldn't catch. Once, her hand clutched at her belly like it might rip free. He thought of the hawthorn tree outside, the one that bloomed too early each spring. His wife had loved it. He hadn't buried anyone in 10 years. By morning, the girl had stopped shivering. Her eyes fluttered open, gray as ash, and tracked the room like it might vanish. "You're not dead," he said, not looking up from the stove. She didn't reply. "You hungry?" Still nothing. He ladled stew into a tin bowl and set it beside her. She didn't touch it until he stepped away. That evening, she stood for the first time, barefoot, unsteady, cradling her belly like something both sacred and dangerous. She stared at the fire, then at him. "I can work," she said. Her voice was hoarse but steady. "If that's what it takes." He set down his carving. "You don't owe me nothing." She shook her head. "I ain't staying out of kindness." He nodded once, slow. Understood. They didn't speak for hours after that. The next day, she swept the floor and washed the bowls without being asked. He went out to split timber, found himself glancing toward the window more than usual. That night, she boiled water and added dried roots to it. Smelled bitter and strange, but it eased his aching knee. She didn't offer her name. He didn't ask. 2 nights later, she screamed in her sleep. He jolted upright, hand flying to where his rifle used to rest. She sat up, drenched in sweat, gasping like someone drowning. When he reached for her, she flinched hard, fingers like claws raised in defense. He stepped back. She curled in on herself, hugging her knees, eyes wild. He locked me in the barn, she whispered. Said the baby wasn't worth nothing unless it screamed like a white one. The silence afterward was thick as tree sap. He didn't ask who. Didn't need to. Some names weren't worth the air. Instead, he sat across from her. After a while, she leaned forward, poked at the fire with a stick, and asked, "Why do you live all the way up here?" He stared into the flames. "Because nobody else does." She almost smiled. Then didn't. That night, she slept without nightmares. Snow fell for 3 more days. The woodpile shrank. The fire burned constant. On the 4th morning, he found her outside, collecting kindling with bare hands. Her coat barely covered her. He brought out his old war jacket, wool-lined and too big, and draped it over her shoulders. She stiffened at first, then nodded her thanks. She didn't speak again until dusk. They sat across the fire, stew bubbling low. My brother used to say, "Quiet men are dangerous." He didn't answer. She sipped from the tin cup, winced. He was right. Still no reply. Then she said, "But I don't think you are." The wind shifted outside, less cruel now, like it had given up trying to break through. He poked at the fire. The bear carving was finished now. Sitting beside the hearth, it looked oddly noble. She noticed it, leaned forward. "Did you make that?" He nodded. She touched her belly, then the carving, gently. "I think you'll need one." He didn't ask who he was, but he nodded again. The first gesture that said, "You can stay." And outside, for the first time in weeks, the storm began to break. Morning came with the low creak of pine boughs shifting under ice. Sunlight leaked through frostbitten window panes in long, silver blades. The girl stood at the stove, ladling oatmeal into 2 chipped bowls with a kind of quiet purpose that said she had done this before, long ago, for people who hadn't deserved it. He watched her from the woodpile outside, arms stacked with fresh-cut logs. Her shape moved slow, but certain now, the fear beginning to melt from her shoulders like snow off warm stone. She still hadn't told him her name, and he hadn't asked. Names had a way of making things too permanent. They ate in silence, like always. The only sound was the ticking of the fire and the muffled drip of thawing snow from the roof. She'd started humming, sometimes, quiet tunes that never lasted more than a few notes, like she was testing the cabin's patience. Later, she asked if she could help him outside. He hesitated. Her belly was rounding quick. Every day, she looked closer to the edge of something sacred and dangerous. But she didn't wait for permission. She wrapped herself in his war jacket again and stepped into the yard, one hand always braced on her lower back like it hurt to carry so much hope. She helped him split kindling, slow but steady. Each swing of the hatchet sent a jolt up her arms, but she didn't complain. He caught her wincing once and wordlessly passed her a smaller axe. "You ever cut timber before?" he asked, surprising them both. "Cut fence posts once," she said, pausing. "Didn't hold." He nodded. "Most things don't, if you're the only one trying." She stopped splitting, leaned against the stump. "You ever been married?" He didn't answer at first. He just looked out toward the hawthorn tree. The branches were brittle this time of year, like ribs with no breath left inside them. "Once," he said. "What happened?" "They died." She didn't push, just nodded, like she knew the shape of that sentence too well. The days folded into a rhythm. She swept. He chopped. She cooked. He hunted. At night, she curled near the fire, rubbing her belly in slow circles, and he carved. A fox, a rabbit, a horse's head. She lined them on the mantel, beside the bear. Little guardians, she called them, though not to him. When the first signs of spring showed, a thawed patch near the river, birdsong before dawn, she ventured further from the cabin. He found her sitting on a stump one morning, weaving bits of straw and dried flowers into a small ring. When he asked what it was, she said, "A cradle charm." Then added quieter, "For luck." He didn't tell her luck didn't work out here. Out here, you made do with grit and good boots. One evening, she caught him watching her while she folded linens. Her eyes met his without flinching. You ever want children? He hesitated, then nodded. Almost did. War came first, then fire. She looked down at her belly. This one wasn't planned. Wasn't wanted either. Not at first. You want it now? She answered too quickly. Yes. The lie hung between them, thin and trembling. He stood and went outside, needing the cold to burn it away. That night, the river swelled. Ice broke with the sound of distant thunder. She tried to leave again. He woke to the door swinging open, snow curling in like smoke. Her tracks led toward the trees. He followed, heart thudding. He found her on the riverbank, soaked to the waist, one boot missing, arms wrapped around herself. She didn't cry when he lifted her. Didn't fight. Just shook like a leaf and whispered, "I don't want him to come back." He will. He didn't ask who. He just carried her home. She was sick for 2 days after, fevered, half delirious, muttering things he couldn't untangle. He wiped her brow, spooned broth past her chapped lips, and told her to stay. Once, when she finally slept, she reached out in her dreams and gripped his hand like it was the last rope before drowning. On the third morning, she woke alert. The fire was down to coals. He was asleep in the chair, chin tucked to his chest. "You built this place yourself?" she asked softly. He stirred. "Mostly." She looked around. "It's solid. Doesn't creak when the wind pushes. I used to hate the sound of doors swinging. Had to build something that wouldn't move unless I said so." She studied him, eyes clearer now. "Someone did something to you," she said, voice thin as thread. He didn't deny it. "Same as they did to you." That night, she handed him a needle and his old coat, torn along the sleeve. "You fix the walls," she said. "I'll fix the seams." The baby kicked hard 2 days later. She gasped, pressed her palm to her stomach, and laughed, a real laugh, sharp and startled. He looked up from carving a rocking chair leg. "First time." "First when I let myself feel," she said. He nodded once, then returned to shaping the wood. Outside, snow gave way to mud. The hawthorn tree began to bud, too early, as always. He watched her sometimes through the window. She talked to the unborn child like she was introducing it to the world. "See that bird?" she whispered once. "That's a wren. Loud little thing. We'll make friends with the quiet ones too." Then one night, just as the sun dipped red behind the pines, she stood in the doorway with a folded bundle in her arms. "For you," she said. It was a blanket, old, well-mended, with sun-faded stars stitched along the edge. "Was mine when I was small. Mama made it. I want him to sleep in it." He took it gently, ran calloused fingers across the threads. For the first time in years, his throat tightened with something other than cold. He didn't say, "Thank you." Didn't need to. When she turned to go, he asked, "You want me to teach you how to shoot?" She stopped, looked back. "I already know how," she said. And just like that, something unspoken passed between them. A mutual trust, forged not by words, but by the long work of surviving one another. She smiled then. Not the polite, scared kind. A real one. Tired, soft, maybe even hopeful. And, inside, the rocking chair began to take shape. The river was running hard now, no longer choked with ice, but furious with spring melt. It foamed and hissed against its banks, a sound that threaded through the trees like a warning. He stood on the porch, sharpening the axe slowly, stone rasping metal in long, even strokes. From inside, he heard her humming again, the same quiet tune she'd picked up weeks ago, as if trying to make a home of the air itself. She moved slower now. The baby had dropped. Each step was heavier, more considered. But she moved still. She wouldn't let him do everything. Even as her body pulled tight with fatigue, she kept her hands busy. She'd stitched the cradle blanket again, boiled juniper into tea, cleaned out the root cellar to make space. Somewhere in all that movement, she began to speak of after. After the birth. After the thaw. After the fear. Words like someday started showing up in her mouth. She didn't say them to him directly, just left them floating in the space between. The lumberjack never said much about the future. He trusted the weight of wood, the snap of kindling, the ache in his spine at day's end. Those were things you could count on. But in quiet moments, when her hand rested on the swell of her belly and her voice softened into story, he listened like a starving man. Then came the horse. He heard it first, hooves pounding down the trail in a broken rhythm. No bird call, no wind, just that sound, out of place and wrong. By the time he stepped off the porch, the rider had already broken through the tree-line. The brother. Same twitching mouth, same hungry eyes, but thinner now and meaner, the kind of thin that comes with failure and rot. He dismounted clumsily, staggered toward the cabin with a grin that had no warmth. "She's still here?" he asked, brushing mud from his coat. The lumberjack didn't answer. "Guess I figured she would be. You always struck me for the soft kind." The girl stepped into the doorway, hand on her belly. She didn't speak, didn't flinch, just stared. "Well, look at you," the brother said, glowing like a lantern. "Bet you thought I was gone for good." "I did," she said. Her voice was calm. Too calm. "Turns out I got myself into some trouble. Folks back east are sniffing around. Thought I'd check in, make sure family's still willing to help." "You sold your family," she said. He sneered. "Didn't realize I needed permission." The lumberjack stepped forward then, slow and sure, axe still in hand. "You need to leave." The brother turned, eyes flicking to the blade. "Or what? You'll bury me out back with the other ghosts? I ain't afraid of axe men with lonely hearts." "You should be." The brother laughed, too loud. "She's just a girl. And that baby? Might not even be mine. But she owes me, and you know it." She stepped forward, one hand gripping the doorframe. "I owe nothing," she said. "And I'm not afraid of you anymore." That shook him, just a little. His grin faltered. He looked between them, saw something had shifted. "This ain't over," he muttered. "You can't hide forever. I got friends. Real ones." Then he turned, mounted his horse, and vanished like smoke into the trees. The silence afterward clung thick. The lumberjack turned to her. "He'll be back." "I know." They boarded the windows that night. Moved tools inside. Checked the latch on the cellar door. She sat beside the fire, wrapping strips of cloth into tight, clean rolls. "You planning on fighting him?" she asked. "If he brings trouble, I'll stop it." "What if stopping it means killing him?" He didn't answer. She looked at him then, eyes sharp and tired. "Don't kill him for me." He looked up from the whetstone. "Why not?" "Because then we're him." The fire cracked loud. He nodded, slowly, but didn't put down the blade. That night, they both slept in shifts. She on the bed, cradling her belly. He in the rocking chair, the axe propped beside him like a promise. The next day passed in strange quiet. No birds, no wind, just the feeling, tight and electric, that something had been set in motion and couldn't be stopped. By twilight, they saw the others. 2 men this time. One on foot, one with a rifle slung over his back. Strangers. Eyes hollow, boots caked in dried blood. The brother trailing, behind them like a crow feeding off the wake. She backed toward the cellar. He stood on the porch. "You're outnumbered," the brother called. "Don't be stupid. We just want her. And the child. You can go back to playing house when we're done." The lumberjack didn't move. His voice came low. "You leave this place, or you don't leave at all." The man with the rifle raised it. The girl screamed from inside. He moved first. The axe split the air with a hiss. The rifle cracked. The world narrowed to instinct. He met the first man halfway, shoulder to chest, knocking him off balance. The axe handle caught a jaw, sent teeth scattering into the snow. The second man lunged, blade flashing. Pain bloomed across the lumberjack's arm, but he didn't fall. He twisted, roared, drove the butt of the axe into the man's gut. Gunfire again. Splinters exploded from the cabin door. The girl was screaming, but not in fear, something else. A keening, rhythmic cry. Labor. The brother staggered forward, knife in hand, eyes wide with something desperate. "Give her to me." The lumberjack turned just in time to catch the blade across his ribs. Hot blood soaked into wool. He dropped the axe. The brother raised his knife again and froze. She stood behind him now, one hand on the cellar latch, the other holding the old repeater rifle he once traded for her. Her eyes burned. "Don't," she said. He turned toward her, uncertain, breath ragged. "I swear. I don't want to kill you," she whispered. "But I will." He saw something in her then, a strength he'd never understood, something ancient and unmoving. He lowered the blade. The lumberjack grabbed him by the collar and shoved him into the snow. "Leave," he said. "Now." The brother crawled, bleeding, into the woods. The others followed, limping and broken. The lumberjack dropped to one knee. She rushed to him, trembling. "You're hurt." He shook his head. "You're in labor." "I know." They held each other for a long moment. Then, together, they went inside. The storm had passed, but another was just beginning. One of blood, birth, and something neither of them could name just yet. But they were ready. Thunder rolled along the mountain ridges as the sky darkened, heavy with storm. Inside the cabin, the air was thick with smoke, sweat, and tension. The fire burned low, casting long shadows that trembled with every gust of wind slipping through the walls. She gripped the edge of the bed, face pressed into her forearm, breath coming in sharp bursts. The pain bent her forward, stole her voice, then left her gasping. He stood close, hands red from washing, sleeves rolled, brow furrowed deep. The cut along his ribs burned, but he didn't flinch. Every part of him focused on her voice, her trembling, the slick blood pooling between her knees. "You're doing good," he said, low and steady. "You're almost there." She shook her head, wild-eyed. I can't do this alone." "You're not alone," he answered. "I'm right here." The wind slammed the cabin door, and they both jumped. He moved quickly, wedging it shut with a firewood rack, his pulse hammering louder than the storm outside. Every sound twisted his nerves. He couldn't trust the silence anymore. He couldn't be sure the brother hadn't circled back, full of fresh venom. But when he looked at her, the fear left him. There wasn't room for it. She needed him, and that was all that mattered. Her scream filled the room, sharp as flint. He was beside her in seconds, holding her shoulders, telling her to breathe, to push, to fight. She pushed. Again and again. The cabin felt like it would split in half from the pressure. The storm outside battering the roof. The storm inside beating out a rhythm of blood and grit and desperate will. Then a cry. Small, wet, fierce. She collapsed backward, tears streaking her face. He lifted the newborn in shaking hands, wrapped him quickly in the faded star-stitched blanket, and laid him on her chest. The baby's cries turned to hiccups, then quiet. She laughed, then sobbed. And he felt something break open in his chest that had been sealed tight for over a decade. She cradled the child like a soldier laying down arms. Her voice cracked when she said, "He's got your eyes." "No," he said, kneeling beside her. "He's got yours. The kind that know how to stay standing." Lightning split the sky outside. For a moment, the whole room glowed with blue fire. Then came the knock. One beat. Two. He rose slowly, dread crawling over him like ice. She clutched the baby tighter, eyes pleading. He opened the door. The brother stood there, soaked and shivering, bleeding from the temple. No weapon in his hand. Just that same crooked, desperate look he wore the day he left her behind. "I couldn't find my way out," he said. "I got turned around. Everything looks the same." The lumberjack said nothing. The brother, gestured vaguely. "She never belonged to you. She's my blood. I didn't mean to. Not like it happened." "You meant enough," the lumberjack replied. "I just want to see the baby." No. Rain began to fall, thick and cold. The brother looked down, swaying. "She was mine to protect," he murmured. "I failed." "She's hers now," the lumberjack said. "And she's not yours to see." The brother's shoulders collapsed inward. He looked smaller than before, hollow. "I got nothing left," he said. "That's more than you deserve." He turned then, not waiting for a reply, and disappeared into the dark. Not a threat this time, just a man crumbling into the earth. The lumberjack closed the door and barred it. When he turned back, she was rocking the baby gently, her eyes bright with exhaustion, but calm. I heard it, she said. He sat beside her. He won't come back again. She nodded. Still, thank you. For what? For choosing not to kill him. I didn't do it for him. I know. They sat in silence, listening to the rain on the roof. It came softer now, like the storm had spent itself. In the days that followed, the world thawed. The river calmed. Birds returned. Sap ran fresh in the trees. She named the child herself. Quietly, one morning, as the three of them sat on the porch wrapped in quilts. She didn't ask permission. He didn't expect her to. The cradle he'd built stood beside the hearth now, polished smooth. Inside it, the child slept with one hand curled in a fist and the other open toward the sky. She spent her mornings humming again, this time without fear. The tune lasted longer now. He repaired the fence near the hill, planted wildflowers along the slope. She made bread. He taught her how to patch a boot sole. She taught him how to let laughter in without suspicion. One evening, as dusk fell in bands of pink and gold across the valley, she brought him a small wooden carving. A bear, but smaller than the first. Its paw rested protectively on a smaller cub. I thought it belonged here, she said, placing it on the mantel. He looked at it for a long moment. I didn't think I'd still be alive for a second chance, he said. You didn't get one, she answered. You made one. Outside, the hawthorn tree bloomed too early again, its white flowers shivering in the breeze. They didn't speak of the brother anymore, or the trail he vanished down. Some men disappear when their names stop being spoken, and some are reborn the same way. The child stirred in the cradle, and both of them turned toward the sound, not out of fear, but instinct. She went first, lifting him gently, whispering something the lumberjack couldn't quite hear. When she looked back, she smiled. He smiled, too. A man who'd buried everything he loved now found himself building again. Wood, warmth, love, out of ruin. The wind shifted through the pines. The land breathed, and the cabin stood, solid and still, beneath the wide western sky.